Hello and welcome to the Wade McDonald Headstart series. Today we're going to be looking into how to create the CV, which will hopefully help you stand out from the competition in the market. Quick introduction to myself. My name's Chris Goulding and I'm the Managing Director at Wade McDonald. I have worked within the Thames Valley for the last 21 years, primarily recruiting within finance. I spent 18 years working for a corporate recruiter before moving to Wade McDonald nearly 3 years ago. And in my past life, I've presented this subject to most of the professional institutes across the South, including CIMA, ACCA, AAT, and CIPD. Wade McDonald ourselves, 30 years in the local area, primarily finance, data science, and HR staff. We recruit for large companies within the FTSE 250, right the way down to SME, specialist consultants working across private and public sector clients, as well as covering public sector. So, what is the purpose of a CV? Simply put, the purpose of the CV is to showcase your experience in order to gain an interview. It's a sales tool, which should show you as a well-qualified, professional, concise and thoughtful individual who is taking your career seriously. A lot of statistics will show that recruiters, internal and external, probably spend less than a minute reading a CV. So the purpose of what we're going to look at today is to try and make you have a CV that will help you stand out and be impactful. So first of all, what structure and order should you look at for your CV? My belief is that you should use the header for your address and contact details. Don't leave it out. We see CVs where it's got a name but no way of contacting people. We also see CVs where it will have the email address and a telephone number, but not the place that you're living in. Try not to leave that as an open question that somebody would have to ask you, because they might not ask and people will want to look at the commute that you've got. Then you start with your name, a personal statement, which we'll look at in a moment. I would then put some key skills and achievements, ideally bulletproofed. Then your professional qualifications and education. I appreciate a lot of professionals that have worked for a long time might believe this could be at the bottom so as not to take up space, but for me I'd still put it at the top because it stops again the questions being asked, and as we've seen with the 60-second rule, it might be that people don't get down to the bottom, so they might miss your professional qualification. Then your career history, might sound obvious, but put your most recent job first. I still see CVs that I consider to be upside down, and you want people to see what you've been doing most recently as quickly as possible. Nearer the end, hobbies, interest, charity work, that's if you want to put them on, and again we'll examine whether that's a good or bad idea as we go through, and then either some references or writing in their references available on request. You could spend some time looking at LinkedIn or other people's CVs to try and see what your competition is doing with their CV and to steal some of the ideas that they might use. Okay, so length of CV, probably the most common question that we're asked. And commonly, I would say the answer is that people will say 2 pages. However, if you're nearer the beginning of your career, I wouldn't worry if it's just 1 page, as long as you put everything on there that you need. And if you're really experienced, then it might well be 3 pages. I think when I do these seminars face-to-face, one of the things I ask people is if you're actually a recruiter, and a lot of people that come to these seminars are. When you ask the people that have actually done recruitment within the room if they would discount someone for having a 3-page CV, their answer is probably no. So the most important thing is that you have a CV that is concise and relevant to the role that you're applying for. A good personal statement then. I think a paragraph, probably 4 or 5 sentences. It needs to explain who you are, what skills you possess, and also I think what role you're looking for next. Try and avoid the cliches and try and make it pertinent to the job that you're applying for. You will probably change your personal statement for every role that you apply for directly in order to make it relevant to the role that you're applying for. The cliches I would avoid are things like hardworking individual. I think that should just be what they would assume you are. Works well in a team, but also works well on an individual basis. They're sort of things that we see quite often, which don't really add to what you're doing. Okay, here's an example of a good personal statement. Obviously, this is a finance orientated one. So I've got a highly motivated SEMA qualified finance professional with 15 years post-qualified experience. Straight away, they're explaining that they're qualified and also how far through their career they are, pointing out what sort of organisations they've worked for, and then some of the key skills: business partnering, supporting senior level executives, working across a multitude of regions, pointing out they're a strong man manager, but then also showing that they will use those skills to support, challenge, and hopefully develop their staff. Proactive and innovative in approach, but that's then talking about being focused towards something. And then finally, they're saying what they're looking for next. So that last line is probably the thing that you will find will change for every single role that you're applying for. Skills and achievements. So personal statement will have covered some of it. However, I would then have some bullet points, maybe 4 to 6, which goes into a little bit more detail. This is where your IT skills might be highlighted. Again, particularly within the finance world, having strong Excel will be probably relevant to most roles, so pointing that out. And then putting in some of the key achievements from your career to date. Things around process improvements, cost savings, cultural achievements, prizes won, etc. would be good achievements to put in at this point. Don't list too many. It's important, I think, that your first job is on the first page of your CV, so that people don't have to be either scrolling down or flicking over a page to find what you're talking about. Professional qualifications and education. So as I said, I would put your highest qualification first. If you've got some relevant training that's happened afterwards, such as Prince 2, Six Sigma, that kind of thing, then maybe put that in afterwards. With your professional qualification, if you've got first time passes, mention it. It is a sales document. It is something not everyone will have, and it will help you stand out. If you don't have first time passes, don't mention it. It is a sales document. You don't need to point out the things you haven't got. If you're part qualified, list exactly where you are within your qualification and when you intend to complete it. This will allow the client to understand exactly how long they've got to support you for, how quickly you are going through it, how ambitious you are, etc. With regards to GCSEs and O-levels, I wouldn't list all of them. Just go for the relevant and most recent qualifications. However, I might write 9 A to Cs if that's what you've got, but you don't need to list every single subject that you've done it within. Should you add the year of the education? For me, I would do. I think if somebody wants to work out your age, they're going to anyway, and therefore adding it doesn't hurt. But like I say, that is a bit of debate around that. So really, that's open to you to decide. Then job history. I would also put a description of your employer. So what industry, what turnover, number of employees. You might think you work for the best known employer around, but not everyone's heard of everybody. So don't leave them guessing, put it in there. Reporting lines can add some value. You might be a financial controller reporting straight to a managing director. Someone else might be a financial controller reporting to a financial director. So it just gives it some context as to exactly the seniority of the person you report to and potentially how important the role is. Try and use recognised job titles. I once saw a potato accountant written on a CV. They work for a crisp company, by the way. Potato accountant, one of the best job titles I've ever seen, but it doesn't really say what it means. Within that, you might be a commercially focused person, you might be more technical. Try and use the recognised job title and put in brackets potato accountant if you want it in there. As we'll talk about later, recruiters, both internal and external, will use keyword searches. If they're looking for a commercial accountant, potato accountant may not come up. So just think about that as you're doing it as well. Ensure that the months of employment are on there, not just the years, so that people know exactly how long you've been in a role. And for your most recent roles, list your main duties and your achievements. Again, make your CVs as achievement focused as possible. Once the roles aren't as relevant, just put a one line in there, which says the name of the employer, the dates and the job title, but don't go into duties and responsibilities. That's where you'll end up with a 12-page CV. Bullet point, don't use paragraphs. It's easier to read with bullet points. And if a role is temporary, make sure it's clear. Otherwise, people are questioning why you keep moving. And I would only add reason for leaving if it adds something to your CV or it's a temporary role. Okay, so hobbies, interests, and charity work. As I said at the beginning, you might add this, you might not do. For me, again, it's about making sure that you believe that your interests are truly interesting or relevant, or they're achievement related. So if you've got a black belt in karate, if you've played county level sport, if you've climbed the biggest mountain in the world, they're achievements, it's interesting, add it. Charity work and volunteering can look good, especially if you're trying to move into that sector. But I would avoid, again, I guess, cliches such as socializing with friends, reading, etc. Most people do that. I'm not saying you're not interesting if you do that, but it's not really adding anything to your CV. Okay, so some CVs do's, and then we'll look at some CVs don'ts, and there might be a bit of repetition in here. So do include your academic and professional qualifications and at what stage you're at. Do add in if you've got first time passes because it helps separate you from the competition. Do you put your current role first? Do bullet point and do add achievements. Don't do lengthy paragraphs. When you're writing duties and responsibilities, don't write in the first person. Don't write I did, I have. Tailor your CV for the specific role you're applying for. Try and keep it as close to 2 pages maximum as possible, but don't stress too much if it goes over that. Highlight the key achievements in your last role, process improvements, money saving, systems implemented, etc. When sending your CV to a potential employer by email, send it in a Word format. PDF is also okay, but don't have it in things like Excel. Don't see it too much these days, but in the old days, you used to see it quite a lot. If you're available for contract assignments, make it really clear. Again, as we've said, there could be keyword search software in place, and things like contract, interim, temporary are likely to be picked up by people that are looking for that. Then the don'ts. Don't mention marital status. Don't mention dependents. People can use it to discriminate against you. Don't add your date of birth. Still see it quite often. Obviously, in the days when I started in recruitment back in the 1990s, it was probably on everyone's CV, but that stopped after a few years, or should have done. Please take it off if you've got it on there. Don't list hundreds of duties and responsibilities, and make sure you use headlines and bullet points. Part of assessing a CV is how well you're communicating information about yourself, how well you're getting the messages across, and you want to be doing that in a succinct and precise manner. Don't include a photo. On the continent, I know they do it a lot. In the UK, we don't. It's another thing that people could use to discriminate against you. And I realise that contradicts slightly with your LinkedIn, because you will add a photo to that. But in my opinion, and most people's, you shouldn't do on a CV. Don't write in capitals, because it makes the reader feel like they're being shouted at. Don't write too large, don't write too small. A font of 10 to 12 is perfect. Again, I see people reduce the font to try and make it a 2-page CV. Makes it hard to read, don't do it. I also see people increase the font to try and make it a 2-page CV rather than 1. And again, it doesn't look right. And then finally, just be really honest on your CV. Don't do poetic license, because at an interview you will probably get caught out. And even if it's a semi-mistruth, it's going to go against you. So just don't do it. It is a sales document, but it's also an honest sales document. And then your CV killers. See different fonts used a lot and different colours. I personally wouldn't. I think CV is still quite a traditional thing, and just stick to the things we've talked about already. Definitely don't use clip art. Don't chuck in loads of exclamation marks. Be careful to check for spelling and grammar. It just shows a lack of attention of detail, and it won't do you any favours. And explain away any gaps on your CV. If you were looking for work, don't be afraid to mention it, but do explain the gap away. If there's a big gap and you had a holiday during it, a decent sized one, you could say that you were travelling, but do fill in the gaps. Otherwise, people can think the worst. And I have had a client ask me, how do I know someone wasn't in jail when there was a gap on their CV? Human nature, may be strange, but it happens. Okay, before sending your CV, make sure you're tailoring it to the job description. So make sure you've read the job description quickly, highlight the bits you think you need to show on your CV, and try and make sure that they are high up on your CV. Ensure that you've mentioned all the relevant experience, and also tailor, as we've said a few times, that personal statement to the job that you're applying for. Ultimately, you're highlighting what it is about you that makes you interested enough to interview, or interesting enough to interview, sorry, and think about it as if you're the hiring manager. Would you want to see yourself? So a final checklist. Some of this we haven't mentioned, some we have. So ensure the consistency of formatting throughout. Make sure the voicemail on your mobile is professional and clear. The hiring manager, if going directly, might choose to engage with you in that way without emailing you first. If they get your voicemail, you want it to sound professional and not bad. Make sure your LinkedIn page is current and the information you've posted on your LinkedIn is actually 100% the same as your CV. Ask a recruitment consultant that you've got a relationship with to give you honest feedback. We should do that for free. We should take the time to do it. It's what recruitment consultants hopefully will do for you. But also talk to friends and families and colleagues, unless you're working with them still and you don't want them to know that you're looking. Ask them to check for errors, but also to give you constructive criticism around what's in your CV. Change all the spellings to English as opposed to American. So a lot of the time it will default to a Z. We don't want that. Make sure there's an S in there. And a lot of people are preparing their CVs are forgetting from their own experience, why they've rejected applications when they're hiring. So try and use that experience yourself when looking at your own CV. Read it honestly and objectively and ask yourself, would I interview myself? Okay, getting near the end now. Remember, I'm happy to check any of your CVs for free. So email me directly at chris.goulding@wademcdonald.com, and I will come back to you as quickly as I can. Otherwise, feel free to contact us via these ways. There's a link here that if you click on will take you through to all the consultants that work for our business, and you can choose the person that's most relevant to you. CC me in again if you do want to contact them directly. Go on our website, have a look at all the other information we've got on there. Go onto our LinkedIn and follow us. Things like these workshops will get sent out there in advance. And also there's hopefully some useful stuff on there that you'll see that we're posting as long, not just jobs. Okay, so thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you.